everybody, to Powering the Full Access Experience. I was just informed, because I haven't been paying close attention, that John has requested that we do, like, pick somebody in the crowd to do a 1-minute elevator pitch to kind of start things off. So I guess we'll go ahead and knock that out. Is anybody doing a session later on in the conference that wants to talk about? You want to do a 1-minute elevator pitch for us and tell us what you're going to be presenting on?
Here you go. Hold on. Come on up to the front. Come on, step up front in front of the camera.
Yeah, where's the
Stand
camera?
right next to Ron.
Where's the camera?
Yeah, come on up.
Where's the camera, though? So I'm doing offsite backup presentation. So we were having issues with some of our backups taking hours to send offsite, and we sped that up. And you'll get to find out how we sped that up if you come to my session. So, yeah, my pitch.
And no gong. Yeah, Vivian's disappointed she didn't get to gong anybody. So. All right, so pressure's on a little bit. As you all know, I'm coming on the heels of John Howell and Chris Ippolite doing their public speaking, and I learned a lot through that, but it's kind of too late for my presentation because it's already built and planned. And so as we go through this presentation, I'm sure you'll see all the do's and don'ts they pointed out, and I probably am doing the don'ts and not doing the do's. And so, but just bear with me. I did want to point out there's a QR code at the bottom left corner. That QR code will take you to the session either in the website or in our app, and there you can rate the session, leave comments. I'd like to encourage everybody throughout the next few days as you go and attend sessions to please go back and rate and comment and do a little bit of interacting to just, we built the system to be used, and we're hoping you all use it. So there'll also be a QR code at the final slide as well. So you can wait till the end if you want to pull it up then. So yeah, I'm pretty much just going to wing it. As was talked about at the opening session, putting on a conference like this takes literally thousands of hours. And so we've been extremely busy just trying to build the system and bug check and do all the things that we needed to do. So building my presentation kind of took a back seat, and I really haven't had a chance to go through it or do much with it, other than I am pretty proud of the slide deck I built. So, hopefully you appreciate it as it comes by. So, yeah, I think Chris had said something about not worrying too much about the intro section, but I have an intro section. So meet the presenters. I'm presenting primarily. Alex is here with me in case anybody has any questions. He's the one that really architected the mobile app in React. And so there are probably, if anybody has questions on that, he's much better equipped to answer those. So he'll be able to jump in and answer any of those questions when we get there. So I am Ron Glen Cates, the senior project manager at RGC Data, and I've been doing FileMaker for about 20 years. I love FileMaker. I'm passionate about it. It's, I feel so blessed to be able to do what I love to do and make a living at it on a daily basis. So recently I brought on Alex because Alex has about 20 years of web coding experience. Over the past several years, I've been doing a lot of work with web integration. Some of you may be familiar with our product CWP Snippets, where we developed a WordPress plugin to facilitate connecting to FileMaker using the data API. And so I've done a lot of work in those things, but when I brought Alex on, he really made me feel pretty inadequate with his knowledge base of coding and stuff. So he's been a great addition to the team. And as I said, he's really headed up and led the way with the React app that we built this year, what we're really excited about. We also facilitate the Kentuckiana Developers Group, so I just wanted to do a shameless plug. We meet the fourth Tuesday of every month, and like many of the groups, it's been a little tough to get attendance and participation. So, if you want to do a little solid for the FileMaker community, attend some user groups. Nowadays, we put everything on YouTube, and I wonder if that's a little bit of a detriment because people find it easy to not go in person because they know it's going to be available on YouTube. But a lot of us are struggling with that. So, yeah, do us all a favor and attend a user group. For Kentuckiana, it's the fourth Tuesday of every month, and you can check that out at kyfmp.com. Well, the other developers in Kentucky, I know all of them because there's only a very small handful. Alan Bird was one. Unfortunately, he passed away last year. Alan Bird founded the Kentuckiana group about 15 years ago. And then Jonathan Fletcher was the facilitator and the host up until about 5 years ago when he decided to step down. And at the time, it's an interesting story because at the time, I had just started going to the group because it had just come up on Zoom. And the group was based out of Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm in Bowling Green, which is a couple hours away. So it was not easy for me to go in person. But once I discovered it on Zoom, I started attending every month. At the end of that year, we had an in-person Christmas gathering, and of course, this is through COVID, so we did our best to see if we could get together. And there were only a handful of us, but we got together. And Jonathan Fletcher announced that he was ready to step down from facilitating the group. Now, I had always dreamed of doing something like that, but I certainly did not feel like I was prepared or qualified to do it at that time. But the option was either somebody step up and take over or they were going to close the group. So I just kind of said, well, I'll do it. And so I got thrown into the fire and just kind of took it and have run with it. And now, as I said, Alan passed away last year and Jonathan has stepped back. And so it's kind of fallen into my hands. And so we're doing our best to continue that group. And we have some really good groups at times. And we meet at 12:30 Eastern time. So it's a midday meeting. For some people, that's good because they can, go right from the office. I find it difficult to sometimes attend the later meetings. I'm dinner with the wife and, home life and all that kind of stuff. So I like the time slot that we're in. So today we're talking about essentially, last year I did a presentation and it was really all about highlighting our plugin CWP snippets and all of its capabilities. And honestly, it was kind of a promotional session to advertise CWP snippets more than anything. This year, we're not really talking about that. Just to say that CWP snippets is the production environment, the development environment where we write our custom code and we can drop it into CWP snippets, which then facilitates the connection. So it's a very integral part of our integration, but we're not going to focus a whole lot on it. Because what I really want to talk about is all the planning and the considerations that went into building this system. So we built it last year, and truth be told, it was like on a wing and a prayer last year because it was our first run at the conference. It was the first year. All the new ideas were coming out. We were trying to figure out how to put it all together. And so by the time we got done last year, we literally ended up tearing it all down and rebuilding it because of all the stuff that we had learned last year. And now last year we had the website interface and we had the integration with our database. And then Dennis Burnham was good enough to do a FileMaker Go app for some capabilities and some features, but it wasn't fully integrated with everything else that we were doing. So this year we came up with the idea to adding a fully native app into the mix that is available on Apple, the App Store, and on Google. So, I mean, you can actually put it on an Android phone, which we've kind of had a bet going to see if there would even be a single Android phone here this week. I haven't found one yet. One? Okay, so at least one person is benefiting from that. But a lot of it was just the idea that we wanted to see, for me and Alex, we have so much fun working together, and we brainstorm and we come up ideas and we just say, I wonder if we can do it. And that's what motivates us, and that's what drives us. And so we set to work, and Alex really led the way. So we developed the mobile app that so far, from what I understand, the feedback is good. People seem to think it's really, really nice and are getting a lot of use out of it. So really happy that it's gone that well. So these are the components. It starts with the FileMaker database, and then of course it's served on a FileMaker server, and then we have the website front end and the website back end, but that's all built in WordPress. And then we have the app that we added on this year. So I'm just going to kind of go over the components a little bit. The FileMaker database that we have, I mean, I could literally do a session on the database itself because I'm really proud of how we built it. I think I'm going to see if I can kind of pop it open, just give you a little bit of a look at the database to see, every bit of data, every bit of management, everything that we do for this conference is done in this FileMaker database. So we're not we're not just pulling some data from FileMaker and just kind of hard coding the rest of it. We are actually making it fully versatile, and pulling all the information. The database is where we. This is always fun trying to pick up the slide where I left off. Let's see if it's Alt Tab. Yeah, tab again. No, I always struggle with that when I get to one monitor, and then I got to go through again. I'll try and do better as we go on. Okay. So the database itself is a full-fledged, full-featured system for CRM, for invoice management, for registrations, for scheduling the sessions, for building out the schedules, creating the registration records, the contacts. So everything that has to do with this conference is all organized and managed from an actual FileMaker database. And this database, and one of the reasons that John asked me to get involved with this conference last year is because I had been involved with another conference previous years, and also it really started off with the foundation that I laid for the integration I did for the Kentuckiana group. So if you've ever attended the Kentuckiana group, you'll find the registration system, and some of the stuff is very familiar, because that's what I started with. And so John was a frequent guest, or a frequent attendee at the Kentuckiana group, and he had kind of seen what we had done with that. And that's, as far as I know, is why he reached out and asked me if I wanted to come on board and help develop a system for full access. So it started with the database. And of course, last year we pulled in the website, and we essentially, created all the feature rich stuff that we have on the website. It's pulling all of the data. Registrations are completely integrated. So when you went and registered for the event, it created a record in FileMaker, it processed the payment, it passed all that information back to FileMaker, and everything was managed in FileMaker. So, and then of course we have the schedules, we have the profiles, the ability to edit sessions, all of that stuff. Just as a quick question, how many of you actually logged into the system, edited your profiles, did that kind of stuff that was available? Good. I'm seeing a good show of hands. It seemed like it because, of course, we had the ability to upload your own photo, and if people weren't doing that, there'd be a lot of blank photos, and it seems like most of the photos are filled in. So that was kind of our first indication that people were using it. So I'm really happy that people found that available and were able to use that. This year we introduced the ability to edit sessions. So if you're a presenter, how many presenters do we have here? Okay, and have any of you guys logged in and edited your session, made any changes there? Now, most of it happened passing the information to John, and John put it all in the database, but there is the option to go in and edit your session. We added in the cards that are attached to the session. John went through and painstakingly did all the default cards to start with, but you'll see that some of them are very different, and that's because in there is the ability to do your own custom card and upload it as well. So, we're really trying to just provide all of this interactivity and all of these options for people to be able to do things and feel like they're really kind of connected with the system and all that. So, and all of that has come together really well. This year, of course, we introduced the app, and what we set about doing with the app was essentially duplicating all of the features that are available in the website, but in a fully native mobile app. And essentially the only feature I think that we didn't get put into the app was editing sessions. Otherwise, editing profiles, setting favorites, ratings and comments, and all of that stuff is all available in the app, just like it is on the website. So we're really just trying to see, can we do all the same things in the website and do it all in an app? And Alex has been integral in making all that happen. The extra benefits of the app, and we really I had intended to, and I really wish we had gotten to it, was to do some tutorial videos ahead of time to show people all the features so that they could make use of them. I'm curious to find out from people if they have found some of the features, like, did you know you could set notifications? Has anybody explored that in the app? Okay, so you can go and set notifications for the sessions that you had favorited, so that 15 minutes or 30 minutes ahead of time, you actually get a notification on your phone that that session's about to start. So that's something that we were able to do on the app. Let's see. Yeah, it does. Now, confession, day before the conference, we were just kind of hammering through it, trying to, double check and see if everything was working. And we did find a bug. And that bug is that the favorites cannot be edited or managed from the app. When you add a favorite or remove a favorite in the app, it does not save. So it's only available in that current session. So if you close the app and reopen it, your changes have all reverted. So yeah, and I was debating on whether to post something on Slack to let people know about it, but part of me was like, I don't know if people are even using favorites, and maybe they won't notice, and so we haven't really put it out there to say, hey, by the way, we screwed up. Everybody, take a look at what we screwed up. But the favorites can still be edited and changed and everything on the website, and they do come through to the app when you make those changes on the website. What's on the app? Yeah. So what's happening is the app is recording the changes, and that has to do with Alex will explain that later, probably in his session. But there's actually some local storage on the app where things get stored first before they get pushed up. So the local storage in the app is actually recording the change, but it's not following through and getting all the way to FileMaker. When you close the app and you reopen, it pulls fresh data, and so it's overwriting that local data and showing that and giving you whatever your current database state is. So yeah, we spent a couple hours trying to troubleshoot that and bug fix it. And as I'll explain and what you'll learn as we go through this presentation, a vast amount of the coding that's managing all of this is actually done on the website. Um, we're managing the data in the back end on the website. And so we were really hopeful that the bug was there because we could fix that. Problem is with the app, in order to fix the app, we would then have to compile it and send it to an update through the App Store, and that can sometimes take days. And honestly, it's tied to one computer, and so if we didn't have that computer with us, so it definitely has its challenges when it comes to doing these kind of apps and doing updates. So, but that's where we're at with the app. And again, Alex is going to be doing a presentation. What day and time are you doing your presentation, Alex? Sunday at 11, Alex is going to do a presentation. A lot of the information will be kind of cover the same data management and structure, but ultimately he's going to focus more entirely on the app. So if you're interested in finding out more about how that was built and how it all came together, attend Alex's session. So again, what I wanted to kind of really discuss in this session was not so much the raw coding or any of that stuff. It was more the planning and the thought process that went into deciding how we were going to manage the data in this whole system. And so our data flow is basically structured to where it starts with the FileMaker database served on the FileMaker server, and then the WordPress website is actually the hub that manages the data. And so what we're doing is we're pulling the FileMaker data and we're caching it in the WordPress website so that the website front end and the app both have access to that data without having to pull it directly from FileMaker. And so that was kind of the strategy that we've been architecting the whole time. And it pulls the data up, caches it on the WordPress website. And as long as that data stays the same, which many of the things did stay the same for long periods of time, so why call FileMaker again, right? We put a lot of effort into just trying to reduce the number of times that we have to call FileMaker. And so that's the way we structured it. And one of the things that if you're thinking about how we put all this together and you're thinking about the website and the app, I think one common misconception might be that the app is built to just connect directly to FileMaker and pull everything from there. But what we're doing is we're having the website do double duty of managing that data. And there's other advantages as well. That means that the credentials and for accessing FileMaker do not have to be tied into the app itself. The credentials are managed on the website side. So if we needed to change the user account and change permissions and do all that kind of stuff, we wouldn't have to roll out a new update to the app in order to do that. It also gave us a lot of flexibility in changing, making changes and doing bug fixes and stuff with the coding on the web without having to roll out a new revision of the app. So those all played a part in the decision making for that. So what are we doing when we're caching that data? What we are doing is the data API pulls the data and we put it into a PHP array. So we're not creating a synchronized database in the SQL website or WordPress database. We're not doing table for table. We're not doing field for field. We're pulling the data that we need as one big PHP array, and then we're just storing that particular array in a transient field in WordPress. Now, a transient field is basically a field that has an expiration, so we can put a time on how long that data stays good for, and when the expiration hits, the data is gone. And the system is set up so that the first thing that it does is it looks for the cache data, and when it doesn't find it there, it pulls from FileMaker and caches the data and then presents it to whichever front end is calling it. So it's broken down into certain sections. So when you look at the session list, for instance, we get a list of all the sessions and related data in a PHP array, and that array gets stored into a transient for the session list. And that session list is then called over and over again by the two. So it's not like we're also not pulling all of the FileMaker data at once. We're just pulling the relevant data that may have changed so that we can update the cache and make it available. So yeah, it doesn't require any syncing of fields or tables or anything like that. We also architected this whole thing it's not pushing any data from FileMaker. It's really a one-way construction, because what happens is on the web end, if the data changes, we just delete the cache. And therefore, the next time one of the front ends, either the app or the website, calls the data and finds that data is missing, then it pulls fresh data and recaches it. And I'll get into how we handle what do we do when we make changes on the actual FileMaker side. Yeah. Because coding all of the coding that we're doing, especially in the front end, we're doing in primarily in PHP and JavaScript, and the PHP array is what they like to work with. If we were pulling it as JSON, then everywhere we wanted to use it, we'd have to convert it to a PHP array in order to use it. So it just, it makes more sense for the environment that we're working in that we pre-prep the data and turn it into a PHP array.
JSX or any of that stuff. Whereas JavaScript or any of that kind of stuff is decent and a little better with it. So with WordPress running so heavy on PHP, it's just easier to decode JSON, make it an array, and then deal with whatever the language plays the nicest with.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Clay?
Oh, so you could have one like running in Europe, one in Japan, and one in the US if your conference was big enough, and then because it doesn't look like there's any interaction that would be syncing between the cache layers.
No. So what you're getting at, and this is something that I really didn't touch on, the actual database is set up to be able to do multiple conferences. And now if you think about it, more likely, I don't know if the way to do it would be to do a separate website for a separate conference, and then we could use the same database and just pull the conference specific data from there. Or if we were doing it all on one website and wanted to list multiple conferences, when we make that call to FileMaker, we specify what conference we're pulling the data from. So it's managing that data layer. And as a matter of fact, I can show you where we store the cache keys, the cache and how we build those keys. Let's see. It's so hard to see. I'm so used to working on 2 monitors and big old 27-inch monitors, so it's a little harder to see. So what we built is a cache manager that we've built in CWP snippets, and this manages the cache. So as you can see, it tags the relevant data with the conference here. FA 2026, FA 2025, and this. So the FA 2025, if you've explored the website, you see that we have a section for 2025 to go and review last year's conference. So we're pulling the 2025 data the same way, but we're tagging it with FA 2025 so that we can keep the data separate. So essentially, yeah, we're doing exactly that, is that we're specifying which data that we're pulling, and we're able to be very versatile. Next year, after this year, we'll do a 2026 archive of everything that's happened in 2026 when we start building 2027, and we can continue to do that onward and upward. So yeah, that's all managed in the cache. The one thing that is not specific to the conference is contacts, because once you're a contact, once you've registered for full access, whether you went last year or this year or whenever, you have a contact record already. And so when it's drawing from the contact record, the data that's relevant to the contact record doesn't change from conference to conference. I mean, you can edit it through the profile, but you're not going to have a separate instance of your contact record for this year than you had last year. You have a separate instance of your registration record, but not your contact record. So that one does not have a specified conference on it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to get to how we're handling images, because images are a separate challenge. And so no, we're not caching the images into the transients. We had to develop a whole different strategy. And I know Clay helped us in a discussion last year when we were talking about how we built the system. We talked about images and the challenges and the different ideas of how we can handle that. And in a couple of slides, I have a slide that's dedicated to what we finally settled on as a strategy for images. So that answer is coming. Any other questions so far?
Is this a paid plugin for the CWP snippets, or is a custom plugin for WordPress?
The CWP snippets plugin is a WordPress plugin, so it's not a FileMaker plugin. It's actually a WordPress plugin.
And it's custom, or?
Yes, it's our product. We developed it, and what it is the plugin itself provides an environment where you can set up your connection to FileMaker, and this is the kind of stuff we focused on last year. More so is what CWP Snippets does, which is that CWP Snippets comes prepackaged with a class that manages and executes all of the connections to FileMaker. The create record, edit record, list, all of that stuff is done in this class. And also we've provided a place to store your credentials and set up your access. One of the nice things that we did is we included a demo so that you can actually connect to two databases. One is your production database, one is your demo database, so that during development you can kind of work in your production or development environment. And then the other thing that we did is we created some templates on how to use all of the FileMaker functions like create record. And so if we go in here, we provided the code to be able to copy and paste so that you can edit it to connect to your own database.
Cool, thanks.
Did you guys get adequate performance out of, I believe the native WordPress transients are just database. They're just stored in the database. Did you wind up using an object cache or just go with the native database transients?
Yeah, just native. And so far, and keep in mind, I mean, this conference is relatively small. We're not talking about a ton of data. We're talking about 85 contact records. I don't remember what the final count for sessions was. So, a lot of this stuff that we're doing and we're gearing up for scaling was probably, if all we were doing was this conference, a lot of it is probably entirely unnecessary. We probably could have done it just as well to, just reach out to FileMaker every time. But what we've been trying to do is really architect and develop strategies that we can port to other projects and have a plan for performance and for streamlining and all that kind of stuff. So far with what we've been working on, we've had no performance issues. Everything seems to be really great, especially once we cache that data. It doesn't take long to pull from FileMaker, but a half a second sometimes can be noticeable. But it's practically instantaneous when we're pulling it from the cache. So, and we've kind of got this thing going on that behind the scenes you don't know if the cache got deleted and then you're the next person to need that data, you're the one that's pulling the data. All the subsequent people that need that data are getting it pulled from the cache. But honestly, we have not seen hardly any visible. Just once in a while, we might see a half a second delay getting that fresh cache, but it's pretty negligible.
I don't know anything about this at all, but I love using the app. It's great. Is this scalable? Like we have 85 people here and this is a relatively small conference.
Yeah.
Will it scale to 1,200 people?
That is what we basically were just saying, is the fact that theoretically, yes, like we're building it in a way that we're hoping is scalable to, and I don't know when and if we'll have a project that will get us to test the limits and see how far we can go with it. But yeah, theoretically, that's the whole plan, is that we've built a system that is scalable and that we can reuse on other projects that maybe have higher demands. So a lot of what we've done with this is not just, we're not just building it for full access. We're building a system that we can reuse, hopefully. Sorry about this. I think this is the one we're on, right? No, we went past that. This is the PHP array for caching. Okay, so this basically illustrates the flow where either the website or the app makes the call for the data. It first checks the transient. If the data is there, then the cache hits and it returns the PHP array to the front end, either the website or the app. If the cache is not there, then it reaches out to FileMaker, grabs the data, pulls it back, caches the response, and then sends it back to the front end where it's being requested. And so, as I said, the very next call will have access to that data. So it's like one person is doing the workload for all subsequent people until the data changes. So data changes from the web. So what happens if the data changes? What we've done is just written into the scripting so that, So for instance, if you're editing your profile or you're adding a favorite or you're rating a session or adding a comment, that process, and of course those processes do have to directly call FileMaker. You got to create the record, so it has to reach out directly to FileMaker to create the record. But in the back end, the website itself, the end part of that process is that it runs a clear cache for that relevant cache so that the cache is cleared for the next time. Now, in some cases, if the page is reloading, then you're also getting the fresh cache. But like when you're doing favorites, for instance, we're not reloading the page, so you're not actually pulling the new data at the end of that process, but you are deleting the cache. So then the next person that loads the list will get the updated data. So that's how we're managing the changes from within the website itself. Is just, it's all about just managing that cache. If it changes, delete the cache. And so the changes in FileMaker, what we've done. Yep, go ahead.
Of how many people are attending or how many people at this session. So when I register for that session, it's going to go back to FileMaker and it's going to up the count from 22 to 23. Okay, now the next time I or anybody else goes to the website or the app, it will now show 20. It has to refresh.
Yeah.
And it'll show 23 instead of 22.
Exactly. And so if any of you, during your registration went and checked back at the attendee page and saw that it went up by one, that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
So thank you. All right. So when we do changes in FileMaker, a lot of what we've done, and there are a lot of features even with the website that are not just the public-facing website or the web end reaching out to FileMaker. It's a lot of stuff where we manage from FileMaker, and we've set up API endpoints to do certain things. And one of those is to manage the cache from FileMaker. So on that same registration table or that registration layout, if I have to go edit a registration, I have a button on that layout that just says clear cache, and it's using an API to go up to the website and clearing that transient data from there. So then the next person that requests the data gets the fresh data pull. So that, you know, we can do that if we've got a process that changes records or changes data. If it's done with a script, then we just have, as a final step of that script, it just deletes the cache for us. If we're manually changing it, the layouts all have a button that just says delete cache. And I have to remind John often. I've had many messages from John saying, you know, I made this change, or I added this and I don't see it on the website. And did you hit delete cache? And oh yeah, I forgot. So he's gotten towards the end, he's gotten much better about it. I think I don't think he misses that much anymore.
I thought you meant cash money. That's where my head was.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Try to keep him on mic.
Yeah, I was just curious. So when something changes, you have a data change in FileMaker, you go and delete the cache in WordPress.
Yeah.
Would it make sense from that point to just go update the cache, with whatever new data needed to be updated there?
For the most part, it's like I'd say 70% of what we're doing, it does do that. Because in a lot of the things where you're editing something, the end result of that is that it refreshes the page and redisplays the page with the edits. So in those cases, it is doing the fresh fetch.
Gotcha.
In cases of doing ratings or editing your favorites, we were trying to make that as fast as possible, because when you click to add a favorite, we just wanted that heart to turn red, and we didn't want to see any kind of a lag or a delay. So for that reason, we just went ahead and skipped the cache, the fetching the new data, and just had it delete the cache, so the next person that loaded the full page would get the fresh data. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
In the same vein, so there are 10 of us on the website right now. 5 are on their app and 5 are on their desktops. Yeah. And he just added a favorite to his, or he just added a new registration. I'm here, I'm listening to you, the speaker, but it's open on mine. Does it automatically update mine? Does it automatically refresh? Or what do I have to do in order to have current data?
It does require a reload of the page. So it's not dynamically going to update for everybody viewing those pages until you reload the page. So, but as soon as you reload the page,
any page within the website, or
yeah,
that will bring up the fresh cache.
Yeah, anytime you reload the page, it's first checking the cache, and if the cache isn't there, it's getting the fresh data. But you know, that's just the nature of the web. A web page cannot update unless you're using some pretty fancy, you know, push technology and stuff. The website needs to reload in order to update. And usually updating without a reload usually requires it to be the user that's looking at the page has done the action, and then that action itself can update the page that you're looking at, but that's not going to update it for anybody else.
Okay,
so.
It's a question, not a criticism.
You know, this is almost exactly how FileMaker works, what you're describing. Because so each of the different clients have a cache of the data there too. And then when a change is made, you know, it updates its local copy, and then the host knows that it has changed. And then it sends a notification out. It basically, you know, hits the clear cache button and sends that to all the other clients. So they delete their items in their caches.
And then they pull fresh data.
They only get reloaded. So we're not pushing all the data out to all the clients. We're just sending a key, you know, a small number, like, you know, whatever your cache ID is.
Yeah.
We push that out. And then when a client needs that data again, it looks in its local cache first. And if it's not there, then it requests it from the server, stores it into its cache, and then goes on. So it's pretty much, you know, you're using the same architecture that FileMaker's using.
Yeah, the discussion that we had in the session yesterday where we were talking about that, I almost made the connection, but it wasn't until you just said it that I was like, oh yeah, that is exactly what FileMaker's doing, because it's pulling data, and then when it gets notified that the data changes, then it goes and gets fresh data. For those of you who I don't know if there's anybody new in FileMaker, but that's why if you pull a list of records and you start scrolling down, sometimes it may take a second or two to fill in those records. But as you continue to work with it, then it's there, and you can work with it, you know, and zip up and down the list. But if a change gets made to one of those records, then you possibly have to get fresh data and stuff like that. But at least at that point, you've got the bulk of the data. Related to what we're doing here, again, very similar to what we were talking about, because Full Access is a small conference. we haven't broken it down to record by record. So we're not caching each record, we're caching the whole list. When we call an individual contact record, like you go to your profile or you go to a session, we're actually pulling that entire session list, and then we're pulling that session from the PHP array to display it and work with it. As far as that scaling goes that we were talking about, if we are going to scale up on, if we have a project that comes up and we need to scale to be able to do a lot more users and a lot more records, we have a pathway to where we can tag each cache with an ID so that we can cache just the individual record and maybe add it to the PHP array and just update the array itself instead of pulling a whole brand new array. So we've kind of got the planning phases of that in place, but because this just really didn't need it to be that specific, because we're not dealing with a lot of data here, we haven't developed it out to that extent. So, but it's definitely built to be able to do that, and our planning phase and our architecture and our how we've decided that we're going to do these things is exactly, opens the door for us to be able to specifically target individual records. So, okay.
The WordPress, sorry. What if you didn't have the WordPress component in the middle of that? What would you change?
I don't know, because it would be an entirely different. First of all,
Yeah.
if you don't have the WordPress component, then you're talking about accessing it just with the app.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
And if we're
here,
accessing
so,
it just with the app, there's,
Well,
we have a caching component in the app, and Alex will expand on that more. So there is another caching component, and part of that is because there's an offline compensation. So in other words, when you open the app and you look at it and you get your data, if you a few minutes later go back to the app and you've lost your internet connection, that data that you pulled is actually stored locally in the app,
right,
so that you can interact with it. Anything that needs to change the data actually gets queued, and when you reestablish connection, those actions then run. Again, if you want to find out more about that, I'm not the man to answer those questions, but if you attend Alex's session, that's going to be one of the focuses, because he's really proud of how he built all that.
Yeah.
And it's managing those calls and being able to account for, the images won't necessarily show because we are referencing web hosted images, but all your data is there. And then you do actually have the ability to make those changes. They're just not going to get updated until you reconnect to the internet.
Yeah,
So.
and I agree. We don't access the live database because we have it on both sides, but we have a middleware piece sitting out there in the middle, and we use the API to go. So we're doing a similar thing. Our piece is just not it's not WordPress. It's actually just another FileMaker database that just has the raw data in it.
Right.
That's updated from all directions because we have it coming from so many places. So it all ends up in the same place. So it's kind of very similar.
Yeah, and there is nothing that says that this all has to be done with WordPress. We just chose to do it with WordPress because our product is a WordPress plugin, and so that's what we, I was focused on building that WordPress plugin for the last number of years, and so it was an opportunity to say, let's put this thing to work. However, we also have a class that is outside of the plugin that we can use on any website. And there are other ways to orchestrate that hub where even the hub itself can be separate from the website. And so you can kind of host your data hub in one place and manage it all in one place with one technology, and then connect whatever website you want or whatever app you want to that. So there are, 100 different ways to skin a cat, so to speak. So yeah, there are lots of different ways, and I certainly don't want to give the impression in any way, shape, or form that this has to be done with WordPress. It was just the decision that we made to do it in WordPress.
Yeah, I was just going to say really quick that it probably would have been simpler not to do it in WordPress. That's not always the best piece of middleware to use, but when you have a team or a committee or something like that, we did here, and you might have somebody that is an expert FileMaker developer but does not have a lot of experience with web that wants to get on there and make a change to some content on the homepage or something. WordPress is pretty forgiving about things of that nature without learn the back-end coding. So, it's the same situation. Yeah, it can be done in pretty much any kind of way, but that's just what we were working with.
Yeah, and that goes back to the presentation I did last year, focused a lot more on why WordPress. And the answer was simple. All of my integrations that I had done were clients that had websites in WordPress. So, it was like I needed to do my integrations in WordPress, and it was a pain in the butt. And so I decided to build a tool to be able to manage all of that. We do have, if you're interested in CWP snippets, it has its own website, which is cwpsnippets.com. Of course, RGC Data, we have rgcdata.com, but cwpsnippets.com is where you can go to download CWP snippets. Unfortunately, it is not in the WordPress repository. They have not been very cooperative with us, and part of it is that they don't recognize the importance of providing a tool to connect to FileMaker. When we've submitted it to the WordPress repository, what their response was is, we've got a lot of other snippet plugins. We really don't need another one. And we tried to appeal it and say, well, the whole point of this one is the connection with FileMaker. And, long story short, their reaction was like, what the hell's FileMaker? Like, who cares? So, maybe someday we'll make some headway on that. But in the meantime, the only place that it is available is the website. It has a free version, which gives you the ability to do some basic snippets. But if you want to do functions and scripts and some other stuff, there is a paid version, and that basically is $100 per site per year. So it's not very expensive. And that opens up a whole slew of the back-end capabilities. So that was just a little plug for CWP snippets if you are interested in checking that out. And yeah, the bottom line is, we've worked in WordPress a lot because that's what my clients needed. We've actually kind of backed ourselves. I'm going to make a confession a little bit, and Alex and I have had a lot of conversations about that. We've kind of backed ourselves into the corner of being known for being the WordPress guys. And we're trying to break that impression that all we do is WordPress, because we can work in any environment. And we do have a client currently that is completely not in WordPress, and we're able to do his integrations as well. So yeah, hopefully in this recording that helps get the word out that, yeah, we're not just the WordPress guys, but WordPress is kind of where it all started for us. File management and FileMaker. So this is where we talk about what strategy we chose for doing images. And when you're dealing with images out of container fields in FileMaker, there's some caveats. You can pull an image directly from FileMaker with the URL that FileMaker provides. I stumble over myself trying to explain all this because it gets a little complex. But out of the box, FileMaker provides a URL that is good for one person, one time. And so when you're building a website, and if your PHP is pulling that file or referencing that file, then you try to pass it to your front end, which is your HTML or your JavaScript. The URL has already expired by the time it gets passed to the front end, the client side. So the server side pulls it, then the client side doesn't have access. So that was one obstacle that we ran into. There is a switch in FileMaker for the data API that allows you to return persistent URLs. I think we heard a lot yesterday of that's what it says, but that's not what it means. It's the same thing with persistent URLs. They still have a time limit. They still expire at some point. It's funny because when I asked ChatGPT if it could, find me how long does it expire, because what we're going to do is cache those URLs and then set the transient cache to expire before the URL expired. ChatGPT said, well, FileMaker is not very forthcoming with what that limit is and what the time is on that. So could be a week, could be a month, you never know. Could be a few days. So yeah, if you are pulling directly from FileMaker and you want to just pull the FileMaker URL and display the image that way, certainly can be done. That switch is not documented in the control panel or anything. You actually have to run a command to do that. CWPsnippets.com and the plugin itself has a lot of documentation, and there is documentation on how to run that if you happen to play around with CWP snippets and want to do that. So we were faced with this idea that, okay, pulling directly from FileMaker was not really the best way to do that. So we just, we looked at a number of other options. One was base64 encoding everything and then just caching it as text like with everything else. Didn't like that idea. Bloated the data. It was too much to manage and all that kind of stuff. So ultimately, we did a process where it can be a little convoluted. I mean, here's what happens. If you change an image in your profile, that image gets dropped into the FileMaker container. A script in FileMaker then runs a call to an API to upload that image to the WordPress host, to the server. So the image is being stored in the website media, and what gets returned is the URL to that image, and that gets put in a field in FileMaker. So then when you pull your data, the URL to that image is provided along with that data, and then you can reference it like you would any other image on the web. So that was what we had decided to do. And that goes kind of back to some of the other kind of neat things that we've been able to do with this web integration was, building that API to upload those images is something else that we, in particular, I'm pretty proud of how I architected and built that. So yeah, so that's how we've decided to handle images. I think, some of the stuff that I know, I've never experimented with using, what is it, S3 containers? Is that, like, it's not something I've ever looked into, so I'm not very versed in it, but as I understand it, that's a way to connect your FileMaker containers to a place where the images are actually stored on the web, and you can actually get a URL from that. So if you're using that kind of system, then all you have to do is return the URL to the where the image is stored.
Yeah, we have an open. I mean, that's stuff we've been thinking about, making that more visible for doing that type of stuff. This agentic stuff kind of pushed off some of that stuff more.
Yeah.
I mean, another way. Did you ever look at using like open storage on the FileMaker database? Because then all the images are sitting on the disk on the FileMaker server, and then some people like you will point their web.
Right,
They'll
we
have a
could-
web server on that machine too that they point and get access
Right,
to.
we could map
where
access
you
to
can
that.
so you can map access that way instead.
Yeah. and-
Though if you want your data closer to where your cache data is anyway, what you're doing is probably the better route to do that.
Yeah.
Because then you're not going back and hitting the FileMaker server itself.
Yep. At some point, I was aware that was another, among all the different options that we have, that would be another idea and another option, as long as we could map access to the file structure from the website to get to the files. It just was, yeah, it didn't seem like the way to go, so we didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it or exploring it. So, but certainly possible for sure. I think the S3 stuff is a pretty neat one. If you're already doing that, it's convenient because you've already got the structure in place for that. And that's something that's kind of on my wish list at some point, to get with somebody who I can learn about doing that from, because that might be something that we opt to use in the future if we have projects that are more heavily with files. And so it's not only images, by the way. On the sessions, there's the session files that people have uploaded and things like that. They're all done the same way. They get uploaded to the FileMaker container. FileMaker then just runs the script using the API to send them up to the web. So
quick question: is Super Container still out there, and would that be anything? As
I
an
don't
option?
know. I haven't heard about Super Container in a very long time. It's still out there?
Carlton?
Yeah.
But yes, it's out there.
Yeah, I remember when Super Container was all the rage, and we haven't heard much about it in quite a while.
It's just messy.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, essentially one of the things that we're trying to put out there is that we can extend FileMaker to the web without replacing FileMaker. And so one of the things that we're facing with clients and things like that, I know for a lot of years, especially my early years of development, if my client wanted to put something on the web, I just didn't know how to do it. I mean, there weren't a whole lot of options other than using WebDirect. And there were some custom web publishing options, things like that. Honestly, I wasn't really up to speed with that. And it was really hard to explain to a customer all of the nuances and difficulties involved with. So ultimately, I can remember some circumstances where I just kind of ended up going, yeah, FileMaker's not made to do that. So yeah, we can't do that, which I'm ashamed to say at this point, because I've since learned that if you want to do it, you can find a way to do it. Like that was earlier on in my development career. And that's where all this stems from, is just, a need came up, and it was, I still had kind of that same impression that, FileMaker's not good for providing anonymous web apps access in particular. And but I had reached a point where I was starting to go, you know what? I bet I can do it. And so I launched out and figured it out. And working with the data API, the first couple of years, it was a heck of a learning curve. It was really hard to find the materials and the people to get in touch with to really learn how to do it all. But, I persevered, and man, this next generation has got such an advantage with AI being able to just tell me how to do it. And it brings you back all the answers I could never find. Just as an anecdote a little bit, one of the things that I kept running into is you had either videos and blogs and stuff written by FileMaker developers that weren't web developers, or you had them, and it seemed like a lot more of them were web developers that weren't FileMaker developers. So they were focusing on the web end, but a lot of times they would assume you knew stuff that I didn't know. For instance, it was talking, one was, I got really stuck on for a good long time about how to secure the credentials. And it seemed like the way to go was to use environmental variables. So I was trying to figure out how you set up environmental variables on your web host. And every video I saw said, you just run this in Composer. I was like, what the hell is Composer? Right. And in none of those videos did they tell you what Composer was, or how to get it, or where it ran, or how you used it. And so I really struggled with stuff like that, because I'm like, now the rest of the video I'm completely lost because I'm still on what's Composer. So so those were the kind of experiences I ran into trying to use the resources that were out there. So yeah, like I said, AI is going to be such a game changer in so many ways, and that's one where that information, and you just ask the question and there you go. So what we're trying to emphasize with this session is just the fact that I've had other clients and I've had other use cases where, even the clients sometimes already have that impression that FileMaker is not built to be, like it's not something that you do with FileMaker. And so when they say, can we, like hook this to the web and do something like that? And, they're surprised when I'm saying, yeah, we can. We can do anything and everything that you want to do. We can figure out a way to do it. So that gives us an inroad, especially these days where I think probably a lot of people are starting to consider, do I scrap what I have and use AI and build something different or whatever? And the beauty of FileMaker is that we've got people who have been using systems for decades that don't want to touch their systems. I took on a client recently, and all I was doing was migrating them to a cloud server. And like right off the bat in the conversation, he just wanted to make sure I explicitly understood, we've got a 20-year-old system. It's been working perfect. We never have any problems with it. We don't want it touched. Like they're just absolutely happy with these systems that they're running. And so this is good news for them, because then you have the ability to expand to those systems to some of the web capabilities, especially nowadays. It's expected, right? I mean, what account do you have that you don't have access to a customer portal where you can, go into your account and manage your account in the website? Those are the kind of things that are just expected nowadays. So it opens up a lot of those possibilities for us to be able to do that kind of stuff. All right, so we are at the final slide. Thank you very much. And also, again, there's that QR code, and I'm going to, impress upon you one more time. Please be interactive with the website. Let the presenters throughout the next few days know what you thought of their sessions. Feel free to comment and ask questions, and enjoy the system. So far, seems like it's all been working pretty well, with the exception with a couple of little bugs, but. That's going to be the case, because we could only test what we could test until we actually got here and put it under the stress load. So we'll finish up with any questions.
So how does the licensing work? I mean, you're going through the data API. Are you using like just one essential license when that happens, because you have all these different users?
Yes. So hopefully I'm not wrong about this, but Clay can maybe. Yeah, my understanding has always been that WebDirect is just like FileMaker. And this is why a lot of times when you see FileMaker developers using WebDirect to provide anonymous access, it always makes me cringe, because my understanding is that that's not what WebDirect is for. It still should be a person who is a part of the organization and is licensed to use FileMaker. Now, I could be wrong, and it could have changed since the last time I verified that information. But this was one of the reasons that got me exploring the data API, because of that. Because, my understanding, and hopefully I'm not wrong about this, is that the data API does allow for that anonymous access. And in the beginning, when we remember when they first came out with the data API, instead of licensing, they were doing usage metering, and we were, potentially supposed to pay for the usage. And I'm happy that we got rid of that. So, but and unless I'm wrong about that, Clay, if you have any insight or.
Yeah, on the data API, if you get over a certain, I don't know how big it is, but there's some pretty large number,
Right?
And if you want to go over that, then I think there's an add-on, or you can pay for like another,
Yeah, that sounds
100
very
megabyte
familiar.
or
Yeah.
gigabyte. I don't know what the number is, but
Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
but I know it was like you wanted,
Yeah.
but now it's.
And here's something
range.
interesting. So it is still metered, and there is still a limit to which, if you are really doing heavy work with the data API, there comes a point when you're expected to pay, an additional amount to get more blocks of usage. It's a very high limit. Like, we haven't come anywhere close to that. I haven't even looked at it in so long because we've never come anywhere near it. But an interesting caveat to that, and that I'm kind of grateful for, is that images do not count against that data. So when you're pulling images and files, it's not counting as data, which is kind of nice if you're doing something that's heavily image laden.
I think there's some difference between cloud and on-prem too. I think there's additional charges on the cloud side since we're having to pay, for every packet that's, running through the AWS network and stuff like that. But the on-prem is the more less strict version.
Okay. And I can't speak to that at all. So if you're interested in finding out any more about that, you'll have to do some of your own research on that one. But, all right. Any other questions? Well, thank you all very much. I'm, welcome. I'm glad you're all here. As I said, I hope you're all enjoying the app and the website. And yeah, there you go. That's it.
Thank you, Ron. Great job.